Hi guys, welcome to our movie recap. Today we are going to recap the film from 2004 titled The Chronicles of Riddick. Before we start the recap, don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie recaps. In a dystopian future, the movie starts with the rise of a powerful army that starts a big expansion of their territory across the universe. Their ultimate destination is the Underverse, a promised land composed of an eerie constellation of uncharted realms. This big and terrifying force, known as the Necromongers, are so strong and powerful that nobody can stop them. If anybody was to come across their path, they would be easily destroyed. I wouldn't mess with these guys. The leader of the Necromongers was called the Lord Marshal, and he is the only man who was able to reach the gates of the Underverse, which made him much more powerful from gaining special powers. Moving along with the movie, we find ourselves placed on Planet 6, where an intense chase is happening. Riddick, a resilient individual, has become the target of many bounty hunters. After investing a lot of time trying to catch Riddick, they eventually hurt Riddick's leg, which makes him really pissed off. Determined to fight back, Riddick takes out two of the men who were hanging on the side of the ship and shooting at him. Riddick then boards the ship, where he confronts the scared captain, who realizes that he might have made a mistake for trying to mess with Riddick. Riddick finds out that there is a 5 million bounty reward on his head. He then throws the captain out of the ship and borrows it for a little bit. After discovering that the bounty that was put on his head can be traced back to Helion Prime, Riddick sets the coordinates on the ship to reach the planet. Riddick finally reaches the planet after a long drive. Riddick then breaks into a house of an old friend called Imam, because he has a reason to believe that he betrayed him by telling the enemy where he was located. When Imam arrives home, he is surprised to see Riddick standing in his living room. Riddick confronts him about what he did, and Imam explains that he was forced to tell the enemy where he was because he was afraid of the invasion the Necromongers are planning on doing. In other words, Imam then explains to Riddick how the Necromongers have been dominating across the universe, and he fears that Helion Prime is their next target. As they are talking, they get a surprise visit from Helion. Helion tells Riddick that only a few people have survived to tell the tale after surviving an attack from the Necromongers. Imam and Helion are convinced that Riddick is a Furian, an elite warrior from an extinct race. Riddick is not buying the story, and as he politely declines to help them, Imam's wife interrupts them because there are guards searching for a man they believe is a spy. All of a sudden, the guards burst into the house and try to capture Riddick, but Riddick, apparently being a warrior from a race that is extinct, easily takes out the guards who were looking for him. After the guards have been taken out, Imam once again is asking Riddick to help them, but Riddick is still not interested. Shortly after he leaves, the skies become filled with Necromonger ships as they start to attack the city with heavy force. Once the ships landed on the planet, thousands of soldiers are sent out to battle to attack the city. Riddick then finds Imam and hides him from being seen. He helps Imam to find his wife and child and tries to get them to safety. Now that's a nice guy. As Riddick checks to see if the coast is clear, Imam and his family are found by Necromonger soldiers. In hopes of protecting his family, Imam tries to lead two soldiers away, and he gets killed in the process. The Necromongers were able to take the city in one night, and they start implementing their rules. They start to gather the remaining citizens of Helion Prime. The Necromongers' high priest, known as the Purifier, starts his speech to the community and tries to convert them. The people of Helion Prime refuse to accept the new faith the Necromongers are trying to force on them. The Lord Marshal shows his power by stealing the soul of one of the men. Not the kind of man you want to mess with.
This power forces the people to kneel and to accept their new faith. The only person that was left standing is Riddick, who came to kill the man who murdered his friend. Riddick manages to kill his enemy very easily. Even the crowd expected more of a fight. The Lord Marshal is impressed by Riddick's skills and tells his guards to take him to the quasi-dead, who are half-dead psychics, to scan Riddick.
After going through the process, the psychics determine that Riddick is a Furion. Threatened by what it could mean, the Lord Marshal orders Riddick's execution. Following their leader's order, the guards try to arrest Riddick, but he manages to escape and jumps out of the building. As Riddick is trying to get away, he is followed by a Necromonger ship. Riddick's ship gets shot down by the bounty hunter who tried to catch him the first time, in hopes to collect the bounty payment for himself. Riddick is surprised by Toombs' effort, and he allows himself to be captured. Toombs and his men tie Riddick up and put him on the ship and fly away to collect their money. Back in Helion Prime, Vako approaches the Lord Marshal, who immediately senses him coming from behind. Vako, feeling insecure, conveys his report about Riddick to the Lord Marshal, who gets angry over his inability to catch Riddick. Later, in their private chamber, Vako's wife Dame tries to convince him to betray the Lord Marshal by killing him so he can take his place on the throne. Although Vako is unsure about her plan, Dame Vako convinces him to listen to her and tells him to go hunt down Riddick while she finds out why Lord Marshal fears the Furion. Dame Vako finds Aerion after seeing her talking to Lord Marshal and asks her about Riddick. The older woman explains that Lord Marshal received a prophecy that a young man from Furia would be the reason of his downfall. The Lord Marshal tried to destroy the Furion race, but it turns out that Riddick was the only survivor. Now that's what I call bad luck for the Lord Marshal. Excited about the news, Dame Vako informs her husband about what she just found out, unaware that they were being spied on by the Purifier. The group of bounty hunters finally make it to a fiery moon where a large prison is located. Heading into the secret base, the group is disappointed to find out that the money for Riddick was much less than expected. While they negotiate, Riddick is left hanging in the middle of the prison. Using his body's momentum, Riddick manages to free himself, forcing the guards to attack him. Riddick manages to take out the guards easily and is surprised when he sees Jack, the girl he had saved years ago. Jack is angry that Riddick has abandoned her. He tries to speak to her, but Jack attacks him and disappears. When the prison guards released the giant wild cats to attack the prisoner, Riddick reveals his eyes, which are the same as the animals, allowing it to trust and listen to him. As the animals are called back, Riddick runs into Jack being attacked by prison guards and scares them away. After they're left alone, Riddick yells at Jack for joining the same people that he was trying to protect her from. Jack explains that she had no choice because she was sold into slavery and walks away. Up in the prison tower, violence breaks out when the owners of the prison realize Toombs has stolen Riddick from the Necromongers. In the tower, Toombs and Eve are the only survivors after a violent gunfight. Riddick decides to escape, and some of the prisoners decided to go with him. Informed that they are in danger of being killed by the solar flare, the small group runs to safety, watching the sun's heat consume everything in its path. The group climbs a cliff and finds cracks to hide in, but Jack is trapped by the sun's incredible heat, unable to move. Realizing that she would die without him, Riddick uses a rope to fling himself around, picking up Jack and brings them back to safety. With two of the surviving prisoners, Riddick and Jack head over the valley, but Riddick stops them when he hears something. As they look over the cliff, they notice Necromonger soldiers and their leader, Vako. They only have a few minutes before the solar flare hits them again. Riddick and the others attack the Necromonger. During the fight, Riddick is shot and severely hurt, struggling to get back up. As they corner Riddick, he experiences a vision and a force erupts out of him, pushing away all the soldiers around him. The blast causes Riddick to pass out, and Vako, along with his men, leave him to die in the solar flare. Assuming he is dead and not having any other choice, Jack enters the Necromonger ship. Before the sun rays are about to kill Riddick, the cleaner who had accompanied Vako saves him and tells him that Lord Marshal has sent him a message, explaining that he would not be hunted if he stayed away from the Necromongers. The Purifier then reveals himself as another Furian and tells him that he hopes he succeeds in killing the Lord Marshal. He then walks outside where the heat completely consumes him. Upon returning to Helion Prime, Vako is named with the title of First Commander for killing Riddick. Vako tells his wife that there is chance that Riddick survived and that he is not dead. His wife advises him to stick with his story in hopes that this will make the Lord Marshal to lower his guard. The Lord Marshal consults with Helion, who he is keeping as a prisoner, and asks her if Riddick is truly dead. Avoiding a direct answer, Helion tells him that he is very close to reaching Underverse. Leaving her in her cell, Lord Marshal orders his army to begin its journey. As the soldiers return to their ships, Dame Vako sees a suspicious-looking soldier and follows him only to recognize Riddick's strange eyes through his helmet. Rushing to her husband filled with panic, Dame Vako tells Vako that Riddick is still alive and on the ship with them. When Vako tells his wife that they must warn Lord Marshal, she stops him, urging him to let Riddick have his chance. She explains that if Riddick can wound their leader, then he could step up and kill Lord Marshal, taking his place as the new leader. Agreeing with her, Vako decides to keep his mouth shut. Sometimes, it is very smart to listen to your wife. After being able to sneak into the Lord Marshal's ship, Riddick kills one of the lensers who have a special vision to detect heat. The guards find the dead lenser and reports it to their leader. Sneaking into the main chamber, Riddick tries to kill the Lord Marshal, but the powerful leader easily evades the attack. Then, out of nowhere, the Lord Marshal reveals Jack, who has been manipulated to think like a Necromonger. Her transformation is a demonstration to the Lord Marshal's power. The Lord Marshal makes an offer to Riddick, promising him a place among his ranks if he agrees to undergo the same conversion, which would secure his position in the Underverse. Riddick rejects the offer and throws a dagger at the Lord Marshal, and the blade barely cuts his cheek. Using his supernatural abilities, the Lord Marshal overwhelms Riddick, demonstrating his dominance in the brutal fight. Just as he is trying to make his final attack to kill Riddick, Jack breaks free from her manipulated mind and sticks a blade in the Lord Marshal's back. Despite the injury, the Lord Marshal gets angry and gets his revenge on Jack by throwing her across the room and gets stabbed by a spike. Vako notices that the leader is weak and decides to reach out for his weapon to kill the Lord Marshal. By the time Vako tries to kill the Lord Marshal, he is able to escape, only until he finds Riddick in front of him, who stabs him with a dagger. Once Riddick killed the Lord Marshal, he runs towards Jack, holds her in his arms as she is making her last breaths. A very difficult moment for Riddick and all of us watching this. As Riddick is trying to deal with his loss, he falls onto the throne, holding his hands on his face. As he slowly removes his hands from his face, he is surprised to see that all of the Necromongers are kneeling before him, showing him as their new leader. Riddick then realizes that the Necromongers have a principle in their culture which states that they keep what they kill, or in other words, keeping what they kill. That is why they believe Riddick has the right to claim the throne as his own. Riddick is kind of surprised by the turn of events that made him the leader of this force he was fighting against. The moral of the story is that Riddick had every chance to leave on time and didn't owe anybody anything. But yet, in the end, Riddick did the right thing by staying and trying to help the innocent people against their struggle with a stronger force that tries to get what they want through force and aggression. Thank you, and see you in the next video.